Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Candice. Today we are going to talk about how our anger problems are not the real problem. I'm going to disclaim this by saying I am not a therapist. I have no fancy degrees in psychology, psychiatry, whatever else you want to lay out there. I do have 15 years of experience dealing with anger issues and walking through the healing of it onto the other side now, where I can proudly say that I very rarely, if ever, get super angry anymore, right? I've healed from the issues that were behind the anger issues, okay? And having had it take so long for me to deal with these things, and these things I dealt with in childhood through all of my teenage years before I finally walked through and healed from them. But if I had known back then the things that I know now, I think it would have gone a lot quicker and it would not have been so obnoxious and painful to try and deal with all of those issues, right? So, like I said, I have no fancy degree. I am not licensed in anything pertaining to anger management or anything like that. But I figured if I share what I know, maybe it'll help even a single person out there who is dealing with something that I went through. And if it helps you, then it's totally worth it to make the video, right? So, that being said, of course, I am a Christian, so a lot of what I'm going to say is going to be from a Christian worldview. If that's not your cup of tea, hey, you might, if you want to stick around, you'll probably still learn something. But if you don't want to, that's okay too. But before I jump into this video, I'm going to pray for it really quick, and then we're going to dive right in, okay? God, thank you for making emotions and giving us so many different emotions. Not only the good, positive ones, but also for letting us experience the negative ones. Because if we didn't experience the negative ones, we wouldn't understand how amazing the positive ones really are. I pray that you would guide anyone who needs to hear what I'm about to say to this video. I pray that you would take over my mouth and use me to speak what you want to speak. I ask that you would bless the people who are watching, and that you would help them walk through their own healing, or if they know someone who needs healing, to help them walk through it too. I ask these things in Jesus Christ's name. Alright, so like the title of this video says, anger, like your anger problems or anger issues, are not the real issue. Now that sounds kind of weird, right? I know, because anger is a very visible emotion, right? If someone is angry, you can usually see it. You can see it because, their voice changes, they might yell, they might get violent, they might, start stomping around. I mean, you can really tell when someone's angry, right? Or they get super defensive, snappy, all of the sorts of things that roll along with it. Anger is very visible, and so it can seem like it's the main problem, but it's not. Because here's how this goes. Okay, this is how, or at least this is how, the way I saw it originally when I was going through these things. Okay, it would start with, so-and-so said something, and that made me angry. So-and-so did something, and that made me angry. The problem was, okay, I saw it as point A, point B. I didn't realize that there's something right here in the middle that a lot of the times we're missing, that we don't understand, that we just kind of skip over, don't really realize it's there. And that is the emotion behind the anger, right? Because anger is just a reactionary thing. Anger is an emotion we filter other emotions into, because it's more comfortable to be angry than it is to be in a vulnerable state of feeling sad, feeling unloved, feeling fear, whatever it is. And it's easier, more comfortable, and more socially acceptable to be expressing anger than it is to express feeling unloved, or fill in the blank of whatever other unfortunate emotion you're dealing with, right? So we funnel it all into anger, and we funnel it so much that we kind of forget that there's something right in the middle. Or you just don't even know until later on. Because I dealt with this when I was very young, so I didn't know, right? Now, the thing is, when you deal with anger management, shall we say, what you're doing is you're dealing with what's over here. But the problem is, if you just slap a band-aid on this and you just try and deal with this without dealing with this, right? A lot of people try and deal with this or try and deal with the other person, right? But they skip this part. This is where you heal. This is where you stop the anger from happening again. If you just slap a band-aid on this side or start accusing the other person of being the one who is in the wrong and made you feel that way, ultimately it's not going to do you much good, right? What we need to do is we need to address the middle. And if you're anything like myself, again, a lot of the anger management sort of things would be like, take a walk, or, go into another room and cool down, or, go sit down and pray about it or whatever, but I was the kind of person I had no problem being confrontational. None. I was the type of person who would go on the offense very quickly. And I find there are people who, in anger, they either go on the offense or they go to the defense. And usually if you're the defensive sort of person, you're more the type of person who will just shut down and walk away. I was definitely the offensive sort of person who will get up on top of that problem and let's start, hashing it out, but it wasn't in a very healthy way, right? So those things like take a walk and go cool down in another room didn't really help me because they gave me time to stew. And if you have anger issues, you know that stewing on them and sitting there just thinking about it and hashing it out over and over and over again in your head and, will just, it's not good, right? If anything, it'll make you more angry, not less. So I tried, managing the anger sort of things by doing those sort of things, and it wasn't helping. It wasn't working. Why? Because ultimately it's like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound, okay? The bullet's over here. We're just slapping a band-aid on trying to stop the bleeding. But what you really need to do is go in there, find the bullet, dig it out, and then sew yourself up so you can actually heal properly. So how do we do this, right? The thing is, if you have not ever thought about what the middle emotion is between, so-and-so did this and it made me angry, or so-and-so said this and it made me angry, and you first need to identify that. So it could be, so-and-so said this, and I'm angry, but I'm angry because when so-and-so said that, I felt rejected. When so-and-so said that, I felt disrespected. When so-and-so said that, I felt unloved. When so-and-so said that, or so-and-so did that, I felt like they didn't care about me, right? And once you know what this is, once you know what it is that triggers you the most, right? Because there are certain things that trigger certain people and certain things that don't trigger other people. Not all anger issues are created the same, right? So what might be triggering for you might be a theme of, oh, this person says this and each time I feel disrespected. I feel like my opinion doesn't matter. So you take that, right? If that's what you're feeling each time and that's what makes you the most angry, take that, find out where that came from. Go back in your mind, go back in your experiences. Was it an ex-partner who disrespected you a lot and made you feel horrible, and the trauma of that relationship is now getting triggered by so-and-so saying whatever, because it's rehashing that emotion that you had before, right? Maybe it's so-and-so is saying this or is threatening this and it makes me feel fear, right? Fear because they might leave. Fear because fill in the blank, right? So you take that and then you trace it back. When is the first time I felt this, right? Could be a traumatic experience you had in your childhood. Could be someone threatened to leave you over and over and over again in an old relationship, or a parent threatened to do so, or someone else threatened to do so, or actually did so, There's always that emotion, and that emotion is traced back to some sort of hurt, right? Because let's face it, hurt people, I know you've heard of this around, hurt people are the ones that hurt other people, right? And if we ourselves are hurting and we don't deal with that hurt, inevitably, we are going to harm someone else, whether that be emotionally, mentally, or otherwise, right? But that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, is that middle emotion. That emotion, and tracing it back to where it came from, and why is it that that particular emotion triggers you so much. If we dive into that and deal with that, that is where you end up healing. And when you're healed from that, hello baby, don't knock the computer over. Don't do it. When you heal from that, then all of a sudden so-and-so can say whatever they want. And it doesn't really trigger you so much, right? So-and-so can do X, Y, or Z. And now you're no longer funneling this middle emotion. You're not feeling this middle emotion as much, so you can't funnel it so much through anger, right? And express it through anger. Then the easiest way, of course, to heal from this, to walk through this and finding out what that emotion is and identifying it, and then finding out where it came from and identifying that and healing from that, is to do it with God's help. Because God knows every single thing about us. He knows everything that has ever been said that has ever hurt us. He knows everything that we've ever said that has ever hurt somebody else, right? He knows everything we've ever done, everything we're ever gonna do. He knows it all, and he still loves us anyway. And that love, and in that love, he will take you and walk you back through what it is that made you so angry, and what it is that made you, the emotion that made you angry, right? Now, the thing with anger, okay, is if you don't go back, if you don't walk the healing process, and the longer you wait to walk through the healing process, the more likely it is that that anger, that unchecked anger, will turn from regular old anger into rage. And from rage, it can turn into downright hatred. And hatred is a vile thing to deal with. I know, I did so myself. Hatred is a poison. It's a poison. It totally is. It's like rat poison, okay? You're taking rat poison, you've purchased rat poison, right? In the hopes that it will hurt somebody else. In the hopes that it will get them back from it, whatever they did to you, whatever they said to you, however they hurt you. But the problem is, you are the one drinking the rat poison. Hatred is drinking the poison and expecting the other person to die. It's a horrible emotion to deal with. It's not easy. It overwhelms you. It takes things over and puts you in such a state that it's very hard to see reason. It's very hard to have any compassion. It's very hard to go back to feeling any more tender emotions when you're living in a realm of hatred, okay? Now, if you are there is hope, right? I've been there. It's not a fun place to be. God will walk you through it. All you gotta do is ask him. Say, hey God, okay, I am feeling this overwhelming rage, this overwhelming hatred. This is killing me. It's not good for me. It's not good for me to feel this way all the time. It's not good for me to be taking this out on other people. God, please help me. Right? And he'll walk you through it in whichever way is the best way for you, right? Because you can look up all these ways to manage your anger, or walk through healing, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, none of those are really personalized to who you are. God is super personal. He always walks us through things in the way that is the best for us, right? So he might have you work on, if you're sitting over here in hatred mode, he might have you work on forgiveness first. That's what he did with me. He might have you walk through, hey, I know this other person hurt you, but you need to forgive them, not for their sake necessarily, but for your own, because drinking this rat poison is killing you. You need to stop drinking the poison. Then we can deal with all the rest of it, right? He might have you work on forgiveness first. He might have you go through and figure out what that traumatic experience was first. And he might show you where he was in that and how he was standing right next to you when it happened. He might walk you through seeing things from another person's perspective, right? He might show you first how what you're doing and what you're saying in your anger is hurting someone else in the same way that you were hurt, right? That brought the anger on in the first place. Whatever the case is, he will walk you through it, and he will be right there by your side the entire time. And trust me, being on the other end of anger issues and not dealing with them anymore because they're not a thing anymore is beautiful, okay? It's so joyful and so peaceful on this side of things. Like, anybody who needs to walk through it, goodness gracious, it is not easy, but it is so worth it, okay? You know, in the Bible, it says in James, and it says it for a reason, y'all. James chapter 1, 19 to 20. It says, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath," or to get angry. "For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God." Right? Because when we're angry, especially as Christians, right? When we are angry, it leads us to sin. It leads us to say things that are hurtful to someone else. It leads us to do things that are hurtful to someone else. It leads us down a path that obviously isn't of God, right? Now, there is such a thing as righteous anger. You know, Jesus had righteous anger at the money changers, right? And he, had them all leave, turned their tables over, and chased them all out. You know, that was righteous anger, but it did not go into sin, right? And the thing is, we can be angry. Having the emotion of anger is not a sin in of itself, right? Because God created emotions. He created every emotion that you have, and he knows you have them because he made them, right? So you can be angry and not sin. That was a conundrum for me too when I was dealing with this. I'm like, how can I feel anger and not sin? Like, how can I feel anger and still be okay with God? Like, when I started coming through the healing of it, I was like, okay, well, I shouldn't feel anger at all, right? Like, anger's not a good thing. I'm not going to feel it anymore. But that's the thing. You can feel it and not sin. And how you do that is the moment you feel it, right? The moment you start getting stirred up, the moment you start feeling that anger rising inside of you, you immediately take that anger captive, take every thought captive, right? And you go to God with it, right? And go, okay, God, I am feeling really angry right now. Walk me through it, you know? And God will show you, okay, you're angry because this triggered you. Because this triggered fear in you, because this triggered feeling unworthy, because this triggered some sort of anxiety you have, right, about something. And he will walk you through it, knowing what that trigger is and how to solve it and how to let it go. Because when you let it go, when you're able to forgive the people who are hurting you, when you're able to forgive the original trauma that happened that causes those emotions that you don't like to deal with, that you divert to anger, when you deal with that, the anger pretty much goes away. You might feel it from time to time, and that usually just means there's a little more healing that needs to be done. But ultimately, when you've healed through it all, and you've come through it all, life becomes so much more peaceful, right? You're not worried about other people. You don't care what other people say. It doesn't matter what somebody else does. It might irritate you, but it doesn't bring on that full-blown anger anymore, which is just so much nicer, right? It's a nicer way to live, to not have to deal with all of that and to deal with just all the emotions that go along with anger. It's not fun to deal with those things, so it's nice to be on the other end and not have to, because now you're in a healthy space, and when you're in a healthy space, you can deal with things in a healthy way, right? That does not cause more hurt in other people. Because when you're dealing with things in a healthy way, you're not hurting somebody else, right? Because only hurt people hurt other people. And so if you're not hurting somebody else, then they're not going to be hurting somebody else, right? We got to stop the cycle somewhere. And it starts with ourselves. I pray this has blessed you in some way and that you've taken something out of this. I don't know why God had this on my mind today. I imagine there's somebody who needed to hear it. I keep you guys in prayer, of course, and if there are any specific prayer requests that you guys have that you would just like somebody to pray over, I'm gonna leave an email address down in the description box below, and I get to them when God has me get to them, but it's there if you need somebody to pray for you. Now, of course, you can always take those prayers directly to God yourself, but it's always nice to have another person praying for you. Alright, I'll talk to you guys next time.